Who's ready? Who's ready to take this trip down and through the end of Tatarigoroshi? We've come so far to save our beloved little sister. It's time to dive headfirst into the happiness that no doubt awaits us at the end. There you go. That's essentially what I did to my build too. We're diving in, folks. Here we go. The body wasn't there. Well, that's a good sign. The police didn't arrest me because of that, but I didn't know whether to feel happy about it. Just like Satoko had said, I had failed to kill her uncle. The body wasn't there, so I was forced to conclude as much, no matter what strange natural disaster, coincidence, or miracle it might have implied. In order to free Satoko, I became a demon, and this abnormal world was my reward. Yes, metaphorically, I had fallen into the demon world. But if that price had been paid in exchange for the life of Satoko's uncle, then that would have been fine. Since Satoko's uncle is still alive, still shackling her to him, I needed to become a demon once again. He needs to become Demon 2, even demoner. One more time. No, as many times as it took, I would kill that man over and over again until Satoko was liberated. I had already awoken. I looked at the clock to see it was already early in the morning, just about 5. It was already light outside. That's so weird. For some reason this year, and I don't know whether it's just due to COVID and it just messing up everything, when I look out my window and it's like at 5 o'clock and it's starting to get light outside, it just irks the shit out of me. And like, this is the only time in my life where that's ever happened. I'm just like, Is COVID just fucking everything up? Like, my perception of everything is so skewed right now. Once I'd hardened my resolve to become a demon again, I could feel my whole body teeming with the awakened power once more. Time wasn't an issue. No matter what, I'd do it. I got myself up. The exhaustion from the past 2 days was completely swept away, and I didn't even feel sleepy anymore either. I slowly rose and made sure my body was moving like I wanted it to. That would be, I could not do that anymore, I don't think. Like I used to be an all-nighter kind of person. I don't think I could do that anymore. It just feels weird sleeping during the day unless it's like a nap that I accidentally take. I could feel blood flowing through each and every one of my fingers, and as I dressed, I let my mind wander and had strange thoughts. These 2 days, while I've said it was for Satoko's sake, the only thing on my mind has been killing. Hey, are we having a revelation here, Keiichi Maibara? Is Keiichi Maibara having a revelation? I've said it was for Satoko, but while actually carrying out the act, I had completely forgotten about Satoko, albeit only temporarily. Maybe initially it was for Satoko's sake, but now I was just a demon killing for the sake of killing. He was killing in the name of, you might say. He won't do what you tell him. Also, again, I'm leaving knee paws off the table today because even though I'm feeling like my allergy stuff is kind of clearing up, I still feel like my throat's a bit scratchy, and I don't want to give half-ass performance to people. But now I was a demon, killing for the sake of killing, and as a result, I'd sunk into a world fit for such a demon. Maybe it was the same for Satoshi. He resolved himself to kill his aunt to save Satoko, become a demon, and then disappeared into the sunlit Hinamizawa, vanishing into the demon world. Which meant that, after all was said and done, I'd met the same fate as him. I tried to avoid making the same mistakes, but it happened anyway, which meant that maybe Satoshi was here. Satoshi had come to this world a year before me, so he would be here somewhere. Then, surprised, I stopped walking. There was a second set of footsteps I'd grown so used to hearing. Uh-oh, he's still hearing them weird footsteps.
ひょっとしてサトシなのか?
Yo, is it Satoshi following us? Is that all? Is that all? Come on, Satoshi, get out here, you kidder. Come on. The empty, lifeless air wouldn't give me an answer. But I felt a strange kind of relief that there was someone there, that Satoshi had stuck with me this whole time. Let's go, Satoshi, once more into the breach. This time we will set Satoko free for sure. I quietly slipped out of the house so my parents wouldn't notice. If they caught me now and I'd be out if they caught me now when I'd been out way too late for 2 days now, they'd give me a real angry talking to. I didn't have the time to allow for that to happen. Today, I would put an end to it. If the dead body disappeared, then I didn't have to bury it. I could just burn it to ashes and then take them with me so I could kill him again every time he resurrected. Okay, this is... okay. I'd do it again. I'd kill him again. And this time, I'd set her free. Outside, the morning light was so beautiful as to stagger belief. I went to the storage room to find weapons with which I could kill him for sure. Blunt or not, it didn't matter to me. Right now, I didn't need to care whether someone saw or if the police came. This world had gone crazy after all. A world where I'd shown up at the festival and had had fun even though I wasn't there. Even if the police arrested me, I'd probably end up going right back home as if nothing had happened. Both me and that other Keiichi Maebara. Exactly, he's got extra lives. You just gotta wear him down. Like, Teppei had more than one health bar. How was Keiichi to know that? Even without me, he'd fill in. I could vanish from Hinamizawa without anyone noticing. So basically, I didn't care if I was mistakenly killed. Even if I died, Keiichi Maebara would remain. After all, this isn't the world I belong in. If I was going to be killed mistakenly for Satoko's sake, then that was just a part of my duty as her Nini. As those desperate thoughts became serious, the morning air felt more refreshing to me, strangely enough.
これは怖いな。こいつにするか。
It was a hatchet meant for chopping thick firewood. Hey, give that back! That doesn't belong to you, and you know it. Its hefty steel blade was sinister, almost as though it was a tool meant for killing people. I couldn't exactly take it out in public like that, so I wrapped it a little in some old newspaper and tossed it in the basket on my bike.
連日悪い用事に使ってばかりで悪いな。
This is the music you used for this monologue.
今日も頼むぜ。俺の足。
I apologized to my bike for some reason. I'm sorry, bike. For the past 3 days, I've only used it for dangerous things. I've been riding this bike ever since I've lived in my old town. I could walk most places I wanted to go, so I hadn't used it all that much. My mom had bought it for me when I entered cram school, thinking it would be a convenient way to get to the station since it was far away, so I'd always used it to get back and forth from cram school. I'd only ever put textbooks and class materials in the front basket, too. I'd never tried to put a hatchet that I'd be using to kill someone in there before. When I came to Hinamizawa, life finally felt fun. I met the best friends ever and had some of the greatest times ever. Those times might have been shattered now, but it was my greatest wish that I could get them back, even if I had to risk my life to do it. That's how fun these times had been. I killed someone, and now I was at it again, needing to kill someone. Murder was a crime. I didn't believe that people should ever think murder was okay, but still, the times I'd had were enjoyable enough for me to commit such a crime. My friends were irreplaceable, and the time spent with them a treasure. Hanging out, laughing, sometimes tricking each other, but always in a friendly way. I didn't fear committing any crime as long as it was for the sake of taking back those times that gave my heart so much pleasure. Yes, this was a value I had decided to uphold. It wasn't something I learned from a school teacher. It was a noble path that I chose for myself. I thought back to when I'd first come to Hinamizawa. And how the very first day Satoko welcomed me via a blackboard eraser with a rock in it. That welcome really surprised the heck out of me. Not our damn curry teacher, anyway. She would laugh, get angry, cry. She was never boring. She was obviously the most childlike one among us, but she was actually lively, full of vim and vigor, and good at meddling in other people's business. That went for Mion, Rena, and Rika, too. Wasn't Satoko one of the center of everyone's laughing and banter? Satoko would try to look cool. Then Mion would make fun of her endlessly. And Satoko would cry, which would put Rena in a state of ecstasy. Rika-chan would be greatly delighted. and I happened to get mixed up in it. We would always fool around like that. It was lonely when someone wasn't around, but if I had to name one for whom it was the worst, it would have been Satoko. Her smile was everyone's smile. Ever since she stopped smiling, so did the rest of us. And for the rest of us, not smiling was the same as dying. It was just like when I was silently going to cram school every day, just to maintain my unchanging test scores. So basically, we were nothing when she wasn't smiling. Yo, June, welcome. How's it going? Hope the Wi-Fi situation is turning out better this evening for you. We reminiscing. Keiichi has resolved the fact that, well, I gotta go do a murder again, so I might as well reminisce about better times before I go do a murder. Like you do, I have to imagine. Yeah, hope you're doing well. She was full of hot air, but she was our princess, cute and unhateable. You're not on the ground! Fantastic! In that case, I was her knight, searching for a dragon's castle in order to win her smile back.
ナイトなら武器は剣だろ。通販でとのかっこいいやつ。錆びた肉厚のナタで挑むナイトは、多分古今東西俺一人だな。
Keiichi, you're so admirable. Then I saw an old woman in the ridge of a field waving.
おや？ケイチ君かい。朝のサイクリングかいね。
おはようございます。
I reflexively waved back in a refreshing way. Should have really been feeling so happy waving like that. Satoko's house would be right past this road, going beyond the rice paddies. The cicadas had woken up too, and the next thing I knew, I was the audience to their daily chorus. I gave myself a hit or two in the head, then drove away my merry morning mood. I took a deep breath, then tilted my head back, quelling my pointless excitement. The body wasn't there. Its absence either meant my killing him had been an illusion, or I'd killed him and he'd risen from the dead. If I was at the festival, then maybe I should have considered it an illusion. Coach probably thought that way, which is why he treated me like a lunatic. But it being an illusion was just impossible. I killed him without a doubt. Without a doubt. If it had been an illusion, then that would make all of this Hinamizawa that I was in right now an illusion. Thank you for being good at caving, Skull. If this was the case, then here's how it would end up. I was actually in a vegetative state due to a traffic accident, and I was currently dreaming in a hospital bed about how great it would be to spend time with friends and rice paddies like these. That was a terrifying thought, though. If this wasn't an illusion, then the only possible answer was that he'd resurrected. It would make him a literal monster. But if he was such a monster, then I was no less of a monster myself. I didn't hesitate to kill someone, and I could even manipulate curses. Takano-san had died probably because I'd cursed her. Or maybe that was a little much. If Coach and Oishi died too, like I'd cursed them yesterday, then I'd believe it. I set my bicycle aside and went and took a look. His motorbike wasn't there. Of course it wasn't. I sent it down to hell that night, throwing it into the Onagafuchi swamp. Or maybe, just like how the corpse wasn't there, maybe the motorbike didn't get thrown into the swamp either. The fact the bike wasn't there might have been because he had gone to town and hadn't come back, but not necessarily because I'd thrown it into the swamp. If her uncle wasn't around, then that was convenient on its own. Then I would just show myself in, then wait for him to return, sharpening my hatchet. If he was there, forgotten sensations came back to my gut. A feeling of tension rose within me. The sensation was like poison, dulling my actions, but it could also be the trigger to allow me to awaken to my superhuman, otherworldly self. I held the hatchet, still wrapped in newspaper. Its weight in my hands was profound, sinister, and reliable. I didn't know what time it was without a clock, but it was probably still a little before 7. Satoko would probably be awake preparing breakfast and her lunch. But her uncle would probably still be wallowing in indolence. A guy like him probably would have stayed up late drinking and probably always slept until noon. I considered ringing the doorbell and having Satoko open the door for me, but if her uncle woke up at the sound, I'd waste my chance of him still being asleep. If Satoko saw me sneaking inside without ringing the doorbell, she'd be surprised. If I ran into her, what would I say? I've come to kill your uncle for you. Yeah, so stay quiet. No, I couldn't do that. That would be like making Satoko responsible for his death. Be quiet and go wait outside. Maybe that would do it. How would Satoko react to that? She would probably try and get me to give up killing him. I would have to lie somehow to get her to go outside. Satoko didn't need to know that a murder was going to occur in this house. I couldn't quite think of a good lie to tell her, but I couldn't do much just standing around like this. I made up my mind and grabbed the doorknob. We're going in. Here we go. Here's the tension. Brace thyself. You're about to devil trigger the whole town. I slowly turned it and pulled. It wasn't locked. The gap between the door and the wall steadily grew larger. The chain wasn't even on. The oppressive smell of life in Satoko's house hit me. At the entrance there was a few pairs of shoes and sandals. I couldn't tell whether he was here or not just by looking at them. I could hear a television on somewhere. The television was in the messy dining room. There was food scattered about the table, giving an impression decidedly different from the happy family's mealtime. Meals were for eating food while thanking the person for making it, meaning whatever occurred in this dining room wasn't a meal. Nobody in sight. No sign of anyone either. But with the television on, he must have been close. Could he have anticipated my coming and be hiding, waiting for me? The tension I felt was so thick, so tight, that I thought it would choke me. The newspaper wrapping the hatchet's thick blade didn't hamper its power at all. I tightened my grip on it and then, very carefully, took a look around. Where had those peaceful feelings from before I arrived had gone? Even the sound of sweat bubbling on my brow got on my nerves. And then I looked at the table and realized something. This wasn't breakfast. The grains of boiled rice were all hard and dried up. Then, was it last night's dinner? I left the dining room keeping vigilant, went down the hallway and found the stairs to the second floor. When that man was playing with his friends, he looked out of a second-story window. It was highly possible that room was his own, and that he slept there. I tiptoed up the edges of the stairs, quietly climbing, without making a sound. I couldn't hear any kind of snoring. I didn't hear anything up there. I went through a few rooms, slowly and quietly opening the paper doors and checking inside, but I couldn't find anyone around. To search more efficiently, I got down on the floor and pressed my ear right up to it. I could hear the television in the dining room and a low hum, perhaps of boiling water. It was then that I started to harbor some feelings of suspicion. This house wasn't right. It seemed like people had been here since the TV was on, but it wasn't normal for nobody to be around this early in the morning. I silently descended the stairs and went back to the dining room. I looked at the food scattered about. Completely dried up rice, an overturned bowl of miso soup, the package for a side dish brought at the supermarket. I could tell Satoko had definitely been the one who made this. The food was far from Mion's perfection and Rena's gentleness, but it was sincere. Judging by how she cooked for me at my house and the type and amount of side dishes, I deduced this meal was from last night. The numbers stamped on the food package read 83620, June 20th, 1983. That was yesterday, and there was food for two, which meant that this was last night's dinner and Satoko's uncle would have been here then. Stop it, Keiichi. Don't even think about saying the word impossible again. Anyway, her uncle was here last night. That much was truth. He had found fault with Satoko's food, thrown the bowl of miso soup, and flung the rest everywhere. Hidden deep within my feelings of calm and composure was lit a flame of anger and a curse. Should I have ever shown this man any mercy? Well, I'm not sure. I think it was maybe when you buy it at a store fresh, they stamp the date. They stamp it with the date that you got it so that you know how long it's fresh for. I heard the sound again. The one from before. Like a water boiler. Where was it coming from? The first floor? But where? The bathroom, maybe? I could hear the noise coming from the other side of the frosted glass in the far end of the changing room. It had been the sound of the water from the boiler for the bath. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. It's stamped the day that it's made. Steam was enshrouding the glass door, and the heat from it was leaking into the changing room where I was standing too. My misgivings deepened. People don't normally take a bath this early of a morning. If one did, then it would mean that in this house, time had been stopped ever since some moment last night. Was it being reheated? Was the water boil in the bathroom and been active this whole time? I checked in a clothing basket and saw Satoko's familiar uniform stuffed in it. The uniform had stains and dried rice stuck to it, certainly not something she could wear today. It was probably from the miso soup at the dinner table yesterday. I looked hard at the frosty glass, but I couldn't see anything through the steam. And then an electric surge ran through my mind, and a terrible premonition came over me. What's y'all's premonitions? What's gonna happen? What are y'all feeling? What could possibly go wrong? Could she? She couldn't possibly have been in there since last night. That would be impossible. But no. In Hinamizawa right now, nothing was impossible. I gulped audibly and then quietly pulled aside the glass door. Hot steaming air burst out of the slight opening. The fan wasn't on in the changing room, so it went completely white with steam. Just as hot vapor poured into the changing room, cooler air also flowed into the room with the bath. And I just heard, due to it being hit by air, a very weak moan. Uh-oh. That was all I needed to know who it was. Uh-oh, we probably got problems. No answer. Satoko was in the bathtub, surrounded by a thick layer of rising steam. The top half of her body was leaning over the edge of the tub, and she was passed out. The water boiler kept on making a whistling noise, as if angered. I could see the gas flame through the small window. It was roaring at full force, completely blue. Satoko's entire body was boiled red and flaccid, as though her bones had melted away. She was almost like a doll, as she laid there unconscious. I wasn't sure how many seconds passed as I stared in complete bafflement. I came back to my senses and promptly shut off the boiler. Then I dragged Satoko's small body out of the bathtub. The water in it was hot at the water in it was as hot as the water in public baths. Was she in a boiling water this entire night? She'll die! She'll die! Satoko's body was lighter than I expected, and I laid her on the floor and wrapped her in a towel. I went back to the bathroom and opened up the vent, creating a path for a cool breeze to come through. Upon the breeze hitting her, Satoko moaned again. This is probably bad. Satoko recognized me and muttered a response, but I couldn't really tell what she was saying. Her eyes were muddy and unfocused, and I could tell she wasn't completely conscious. Upon closer inspection, her limbs and waist were twitching slightly. This was way worse than normal overheating. This was dangerous. Didn't they call this heat stroke? Think, what would a teacher do if a girl passed out in the middle of summer during a marathon in gym class or something? I turned the water faucet in the kitchen all the way and soaked a towel in it. Then I took the cold towel and pressed it to Sotoko's forehead. Sotoko reacted harshly to the coldness and let out a muffled voice. For burns, right, you would need to soak the burn spot under running water. Then I could turn cold water on in the shower and cool her off like that? No, if it's too sudden, it wouldn't be good for her heart, and she'd go into shock. I think I read that once before. This was about as much nursing as I could possibly give her. Anything more than this would be too much for the likes of an amateur.
大丈夫か、サトコ。もう大丈夫だからな。必ず俺が、ニーが助けてやるからな。
Yo, Jetstorm, welcome. You were just in time. We found Satoko. She was in the shower all night in the boiling water. This is a bad situation. Yeah, this girl needs hydration fast. What was Satoko reciting under her breath? I brought my ear to her mouth and better make out the mysterious spell-like words she kept saying. At that moment, I understood what they were for. People tell little kids in the bath to count to 100 a lot, right? Satoko was counting like that, but 5,039? I doubted my ears and doubted her common sense. 10,000? Last night, her uncle flew into a rage at dinner she'd made, saying it stunk and was inedible. Satoko didn't understand what on earth he meant. It wasn't much different than what she usually made for him. Maybe he hated the smell of pickled vegetables she'd bought in particular. Her uncle then decided that the stink was originating from Satoko and shouted to her that she never ever took baths, and then he put Satoko in the boiling water and told her not to come out until she counted to 10,000. Oh my word. Oh my word. I snapped and exploded. Raising the newspaper wrapped hatchet, I stampeded through the house. I searched for anything. Traces, signs, smells, vibrations, heartbeats. Yeah, like, this is a bad move, Keiichi. I don't think this is going to end well for you. With a war cry, I raced up the stairs with such force I could have stomped a hole through them. When I found the futon in the room I thought was her uncle's, I was well aware that he wasn't sleeping on it. I bashed it with a hatchet. Did he run into the closet? I bust the entire closet down, door and all. And if he's not there, maybe he's in maybe there's a secret door. Any switches or levers on the walls here? I smashed into wall after wall with the hatchet, crushing them. Dust rose from the air and broken pieces scattered to the floor. I smashed all the glass windows too for good measure. Jeez. Satoko is really going to appreciate all this remodeling, I have to imagine. After I destroyed everything beyond recognition in her uncle's room, my reason finally kicked in and suppressed my emotions. Anyway, her uncle wasn't in the house right now. I'd have to leave killing him till later. Right now, I had to do something about Satoko. I went back to the changing room. Satoko was still laying limp on the floor. There was nothing more an amateur like me could do for her. I needed to take her to the clinic. Coach had treated me like I was a lunatic yesterday and tried to lock me up in a mental hospital. I never wanted to see his damn face again, but I still needed to go to the infirmary one more time. I needed to have a doctor look at Satoko. I thought about putting her in a dirty uniform laying in the laundry basket, but I had no experience dressing someone, so it would be pretty difficult. Shit, I don't have time to be wasting here. I eventually gave up on clothing her and decided to carry her in her bath towel. The clinic was close to Satoko's house. It would be way faster to carry her there than call 119 to get an ambulance. I threw the biggest towel I could find over her and prompted her to stand. Her words sounded clearer than before. She was starting to come back. I cried tears of relief just knowing she'd improved even a little bit. Satoko turned over as she was lying on her face and then put up a weak struggle to get up on a knee. I smoothly swept her up and put her on my back. The towel I put on her seemed like it was about to fall off. It didn't hurt one bit to carry Satoko. She was light. Too light. The lightness actually made me uneasy. Yeah, she's got to feel like a damn skeleton at this point, I have to imagine. Outside it had gotten hotter, as though eager to attack Satoko. Fucking cicadas. Why did it have to choose this morning to get so hot out? I didn't have time to swear at them. The clinic was this way. Hoisting Satoko on my back, I broke into a trot. The hilly road to the clinic, with which I had never had difficulties before, was now torturous. Big beads of sweat formed on my brow, and at some point my breath had grown faint. The hatchet in my belt was heavy and made it hard to walk. I considered leaving it, but I couldn't let it go, at least not once Satoko's uncle was still breathing. The signboard on the Irie clinic came into sight, but I quickly noticed something was odd, so I stopped. Several red revolving lights were flashing at the clinic. Uh-oh. 3 police cars were parked in the parking lot with their lights on. Uh-oh. There didn't need to be much else to inform me something had happened. I didn't need to see Coach, so I had planned to leave Satoko in the clinic waiting room and give the receptionist a message. But with the police officer Oishi here, I couldn't go inside so carelessly.
なんですの？パトカーがいっぱいいますですわよ。
I gently put Satoko down in the shade of the
わから
thicket.
ない。様子を見てくるから、しばらくここにいろ。
レディをバスタオル1枚でこんなとこに置いてくなんてなってませんわね。
それだけ悪態がつけりゃ大丈夫だ。
I'll be right back, I added, getting to my feet. Cautious of my surroundings, I hid myself behind a car and got closer to the officers grouped at the clinic's entrance. I overheard an officer wearing a necktie, probably their leader, and a white-robed doctor having a discussion about something. The doctor didn't seem to be Coach. It was one of those who Coach told to make me tea
じゃあつま
yesterday.
り最初に見つけたのは朝当番のあなただったと。それでどんな感じだったんです？
事務室の所長席のソファーに座って居眠りをしているように見えました。
Oh no.
で、机の上に水差しと空き瓶になった睡眠薬があったんで、
Oh
あなたは
crap.
すぐに睡眠薬で自殺したんだと考えたと。
Keiichi, you struck again. He just killed Coach. He cursed Coach. What an asshole.
それで
高熱と瞳孔の拡大に重度の意識障害も見られました。睡眠薬中毒の典型的な重症例だと思いましたので、直ちに対応に入りました。
警察も救急も呼ばずに？
ここは病院で私は医師ですよ。生命が危険な状態にあるなら直ちに治療して当然です。
ああ、まあいいからいいから。それで
呼吸が不正常だったので人工呼吸を施しました。合わせて呼吸刺激薬を投与。効果が出なかったので人工呼吸器の準備をし。
ああ、はいはい。それでつまりいろいろ頑張ったけど結局ダメだったと。そういうわけですよね。通報は死んでから直ちに。
はい、救うことができずとても残念です。
Just then, a radio in one of the police cars started to buzz, producing a broken mechanical
こちら
voice.
本部、こちら本部。
Oh no.
小宮山さん、聞こえますか？
What else is going wrong?
もしもし、小宮山です。ああ、お疲れ様です。睡眠薬での自殺みたいですね。遺書の類はなし。
Suicide? What the heck were they talking about? Someone had committed suicide at the clinic, but who? I wished Takano-san dead, and she died the next day. And yesterday, I wished Coach was dead. Then, could he have...
普段から睡眠薬を常用していたとかは。
あまり知りません。
日頃疲れたとか死にたいとかそんなこと言ってました？
入江先生は普段からああいう性格でしたから。
That's one way of putting it. He was very much himself. Yeah, this is the last chapter.
とてもそんな風には。
So, I was right. Irie sensei. They were talking about Coach. Coach killed himself. Why would he do that? There couldn't have been any reason he wanted to die. The only reason that came to mind was that I wanted him dead. This world was insane. If I wanted someone dead, they'd die. That was the kind of world this was. Then what about Oishi? What happened to him? If people really died because I wanted them to, then something would have happened to him too.
そちらに応援が向かいました。課長からそちらは応援に任せて大石社の捜索に戻るとのことです。
Uh-oh. Okay, Oishi seems to be gone. They can't find his car.
了解しました。じゃあすいません。こっちに今応援が来てるそうですから、現場はこのままにしておいてください。おい、行くぞ。
The officers nodded and split up into patrol cars. Did they just say searching for Oishi's car? Searching for his car. That meant he had gone missing. Takano-san, Coach, and Oishi. When I wished for it, the very next day they disappeared. No matter how angry you were when you said you wished someone was dead, it didn't normally happen. Everyone knew just wishing for it wouldn't make them dead, and that's why people could utter such curses so lightly. Yo, John, welcome. Yeah, you only missed the happy parts. We're about ready to nosedive into the more happy parts, though, so you're good. Satoko was boiling herself to death, but we stopped her doing that. You know how garbage children are. They do garbage child things like try to boil themselves alive. But we got her to stop. And now, for some reason, the coach is dead, and we think Oishi might be missing. At the time, I hadn't even begun walking yet. Tap. I heard a footstep. And it wasn't only one this time. They came from behind, and they stood right behind me, reaching a hand for my shoulder. Ah! Oh, it's just you. It's just you. Okay, never mind. It's just you. It's just you. It's just you. How's it going?
サトコか。脅かすなよ。
驚いたのはこっちでしたよ。いきなり大声を出さないでくださいまし。
It was Satoko. Her eyes were still unstable, unfocused, and she seemed to be at least able to walk on her own now. She looked far better now compared to her earlier exhausted
具合は
state.
どうなんだ。もう大丈夫なのか。
まだ頭が痛いですけど。
That was yeah, it was, wasn't it?
いつまでもこんな格好で表にいられませんもの。
She gave a smile, a show of courage, but her legs were still shaky.
それより、これは一体何事なんですの？今、警察が話してるのを聞いてた限りじゃ。
監督が自殺
Well,
した
he's
らし
just
い。
gonna be out with it. Good, okay. Satoko was at a loss for words. Her face grew paler and paler, and I could tell she was doubting her own ears.
ケイチさん、それ、本当ですの？何かの聞き間違いじゃないんですの？
確かにそう聞いたよ。入江先生が睡眠薬で自殺したって。
Satoko went down on her knees and broke out into tears.
嘘ですわ。監督が自殺なんて、そんなの絶対に。
As I watched Satoko crying and clawing at the grass, I felt myself trapped by guilt and remorse. I was so angry at Coach. I was so angry that Coach was treating me like a madman yesterday, that he'd betrayed me, that I'd thought he'd be better off dead. But even Coach, who to me deserved to die, still must have had people who loved and respected him, like Satoko here. In my selfish egotistical anger, I wished for his death, and it was granted. And now that Satoko was crying hysterically as a result, the guilt tore at my heart. I worked myself up to murder for Satoko's sake. I decided I wanted Satoko to be happy. But was that really all it took? Murder meant taking someone's life. It meant making everyone attached to that person sad. In Satoko's uncle's case, of course, nobody would be sad. I love that. Like, nobody gives a fuck about Tepe. But I might have fucked up with Coach. I might have did a bit of the old oopsie poopsie. But Coach's death was different. I had wanted to make Satoko happy. And that had resulted in me inflicting a deep sadness upon her, hadn't it? But Coach killed himself. It wasn't my... Yeah, she really doesn't, does she? Satoko still hadn't stopped crying, but she seemed to be a little calmer now. Wiping her tears, she stood up.
すまない。
The only thing I could think of to say to her was an apology.
どうして謝りますの？
Are you gonna... Keiichi, don't do this. Keiichi, just stop. Don't. If you're gonna say something stupid, I'm gonna ask that you please rein it in.
俺、
Oh no!
昨日監督と喧嘩して。
Keiichi, what are you doing?
お前なんか
What are you doing?
呪ったんだ。呪ったから本当に死んじゃって。
Satoko looked at me dubiously for a few moments. Eventually, her expression softened as she interpreted my words in her own way.
圭一さんのせいではありませんわ。監督も大人ですもの。自分の命を捨てるに値する都合があって悩んだ末に選んだんですもの。誰のせいでもありませんわ。
She smiled a little, trying to comfort me. Why is this child who has been through so much trying to fucking comfort this guy? Oh, this feels bad.
服が欲しい。
いいのかよ。診療所に行って見てもらった方が。
服を着てから見てもらっても別に死にはしませんわ。
Satoko readjusted her bath towel and started back along the path. Her stride was wobbly and it didn't look like she'd recovered as much as she let on. At first, Satoko tried to get back home, but it was a time of morning when people were going to school and to work, so after seeing people walking around, she thought the better of it. She must have been pretty embarrassed wearing only the towel.
理科の家に行きますわよ。私の服あるはずですから。どうしたんですか?
Okay, we're going to Rika's place. Rika can help us fix this. Rika is a persistent voice of calm. She can pull us back.
圭一さん。
Satoko noticed how I was hanging my head and spoke to me.
監督はああ見えても大人ですのよ。圭一さんと喧嘩したくらいで自殺するような人ではありませんわ。自分を責めるのをおやしなさいませ。
At first I thought it was coincidence, but with 3 people now, I couldn't discard the possibility that there was no such thing as impossible in this world.
この数日おかしいんだ。
何がですの?
Satoko seemed to be having trouble breathing, but she still tried to listen to what I had to say. She's going to listen to this man vomit all of his crazy after everything she's been through. Oh my god, give this child a hug, Keiichi, shut up!
おとといの綿流しのお祭り、お前は途中で帰ったから行かなかったんだよな。そして俺は祭りに行ってみんなと遊んだ。
らしいですわね。あの時は取り乱して。
She's wearing a towel. Yeah, I have hugged girls wearing towels before. Satoko remembered how she blew up at me in the classroom yesterday and bowed to me a little.
実は俺祭りに行っていないって言ったら信じるか?
Keiichi, are you going to be an idiot and literally confess everything? Satoko looked at me confused. She couldn't help it, of
信
course.
じられるわけありませんわ。何を今さら。
信じられないだろう。 信じられないの。
Keiichi, what are you
俺も同じなんだ。
doing?
だって俺は祭りに行っていないのに、俺が祭りに現れてみんなと遊んだって言うんだ。こんなの信じられるわけないだろ。
それ本気ですの？
ああ、あの綿流しの夜からおかしいんだ。いつの間にか変な足音がペタペタとついてくるようになって。
The blood drained from Satoko's expression.
足音がペタペタ。
そうなんだ。最初は気のせいだと思ってたけど
Yeah, I know!
ずっとついてくるんだ。
Oh, Keiichi, what are
多
you
分今もつい
doing?
てきてる。
We need to get this girl clothes! Why are you doing this?
サトコの足音と混じってよく聞き分けられないけれど。
Satoko took a long, hard look at me. Maybe she was doubting my sanity. Coach did the same thing. I mean, why wouldn't he, after telling him all of this? The more I thought about it, the more I was unable to endure the feeling that my hatred for Coach had been
綿
meaningless.
流しの日、俺は祭りに行かずあることをしていたんだ。
Oh no, here it comes.
ずっとだぞ。眠ったり意識がなくなったりしたことはなかった。
Oh boy. Keiichi.
だから寝ぼけ気分でフラフラと
Please.
記憶になく祭りに出かけたなんてことはありえない。
Oh God. Rika! We need you now! Where is Rena? Where is Rena?
それはおかしいですわね。ならどうやってお祭りで遊んだんですの？
だから俺は祭りには行ってないんだよ。
No, I can't let myself get emotional. If I get agitated now, that'd be like proving that there's something wrong in my head.
あ、ごめん。みんなが信じてくれな
We
いんで。
really need Rena to come and fix this.
ケイイチさんがそう言うなら信じてあげますわ。それで
あの夜高野さんに会ったんだ。それで見下されたと思って。
Keiichi. Stop.
俺は
Stop.
心の中で念じたんだ。
Oh
お
no.
前なんか死んじまえ。
Oh no.
高野さんってどことなくそういう雰囲気がございますものね。その気持ちわからなくもありませんでしたよ。
高野さんが死んだの知ってるか？昨日の話だ。どこかで焼け死んだらしい。
Yeah, he hasn't mentioned that.
それ本当ですの？死んだんですの？
俺が死ねと願うと次の日には死んでるんだ。それから警察の大石ってやつも知ってるか？あのムカつく太った刑事みたいなやつ。
Satoko
さ
nodded
っ
a
き
little.
警察が話してるのを聞いたんだが、どうもあいつ行方不明になってるらしい。
If Oishi's getting killed, do you think he goes, "No, no"? That's a little bit of Higurashi humor there for the audience. I'm an idiot. I'm a fucking moron.
実は昨日あいつにも
それ本当の話ですの？
嘘じゃない。俺だって信じたくないけど本当の話なんだ。高野さんも監督も大石も俺が死ねと念じたら本当に死んでしまったんだ。
For a little while, Satoko was at a loss. A long silence ensued as this 11-year-old child stared at me like I was a goddamn psychopath.
それは怖い話ですわね。圭一さんにせめて嫌われないように気をつけませんと。
それだけじゃない。もっとおかしいこともあるんだ。
Oh no, he's gonna do it!
それは
No!
お前のおじなんだ。
Keiichi, you literal moron. You could have stopped! There was a point in this story where you pumped the brakes and this was it!
おじさまの話はやめてくださいましな。
Oh god.
昨日いたんだろ、お前の家に。
あの人の話はやめてくださいます。
Keiichi, you need to stop. You need to stop!
ありえないんだ。あいつがいるわけがないんだ。
やめてって言ってますのよ。
あの男が綿流しの夜以降いるわけがないんだ。だって
あの男のことはもう嫌なんですの。
俺が殺したんだ。
Damn it. Yeah, she's trying. Like, what more does she need to endure? Like, this is literally a cry of please. My brain cannot work if you tell me this.
この手で。
Even the cicadas stopped crying. Her face was streaked with tears, and it stiffened even more as she looked at me in
俺
disbelief.
が綿流しの祭りの夜にお前のおじを殺したんだ。だからお前の家に帰ってくるなんてことは
Oh, man!
ありえないんだ。
But still, he went back. And last night he found fault with the dinner you made him. Yelled all sorts of things at you and basically boiled you in the bathtub. That couldn't possibly have happened.
だから俺はあの男を確かに殺したという証拠を確かめるために
Keiichi, oh my god.
折り返したんだ。
Oh my god. Why don't you tell her how the bat felt sinking into his fucking forehead?
だがそこには
My
死体はなかっ
god, this complete and utter moron.
た。こんなことがあり得ると思うか。
God, I would even take Oishi showing up right now and just being, hey, I'm hauling you in.
確かに殺したのに死体がないんだ。
I also, yeah, like, where's that detail? Come on, you might as well.
そして何事もなかったかのように帰宅してこんなことがあっていいはずないだろう。
This boy has no filter from brain to mouth. He has Miyu Iruma syndrome. Satoko's entire body stiffened, except instead of with Miyu being about just sexual shit all the time, with Keiichi, he just can't stop talking about murder. Oh, she was shrinking away like there was someone in front of her, about to hurt her. Why, oh why? Keiichi Maebara, with this child, this delicate flower of 10 or 11 years old, who you just confessed murder to, why would she be trying to slink away from you, I wonder? Oh my Christ!
俺のこと頭が変になったって思ってるんだろうな。
Press 1 in chat if you think Keiichi's gone a little crazy. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ.
無理もないさ。俺だって信じられない。
圭一さんはきっと偶然呪った人が死んでしまったんで混乱してるだけに違いありませんわ。監督の自殺にショックを受けて気が動転してるだけなんですのよ。今日はもう学校休んでお家で休んだ方がよろしいと思います。
God, how shitty is it that she is the one bearing all of this shit?
私はもう平気ですから、どうかご自分の体を大事になさいまし。
Satoko spoke like she understood me, but she also told me to go home. God, it's so stupid. Oh, I could see the revulsion in her face and knew that she didn't want to be around me
サトコ
anymore.
をちゃんと診療所まで見送ったら俺も帰る。サトコだってまだ足元がフラフラじゃないか。途中で倒れたら大変だぞ。
私はもう本当に大丈夫なんですのよ。男の人にいつまでもこんな姿を晒していたくないんですのよ。
She wobbled up the shrine steps looking like she was about to fall. I immediately ran up to her and helped her stay on her feet. But then Satoko promptly jumped away from me. That outright rejection hurt a lot. Oh, you poor fucking baby! Once she got to the top of the stairs, her breathing was ragged, and she wasn't even looking at me. At this point, I was being ignored. Well, it was more like she didn't want to have anything to do with me. It really was a feeling of rejection. And that hurt my heart more than any blade could have. This was the path I chose for her sake. To be treated like this at the end of it all was just so saddening. Don't be naive, Keiichi Maibara. You never wanted to be repaid in the first place. You didn't do it so that Satoko would thank you. You did it so Satoko would be happy. And that was what led to this ending. Rika-chan's house was a disaster prevention storehouse used by the town council. If you went past it a little further, there was a shrine ground. You'd apparently reach the back of the assembly hall. Satoko was heading there, walking quickly, the gravel under her feet crunching as she went. That's the wrong feet. Did she want to go there as soon as possible, or did she want to run away? I couldn't tell. And then I heard a vigorous sound of wings flapping. I turned around and saw a crow. There hadn't been any crows since coming to Hinamizawa. I saw them a lot in my old town, though. On garbage day, they'd flock to trash collection points, peck through the bags, and on their breaks, drag out the contents and have a feast. As I was remembering that, I saw a few crows flocking around the shrine's donation box, and I thought how terrible it was for someone to leave garbage bag in a place like that. The cicadas quieted. Breathing stopped. Thoughts ceased. Even time came to a halt. I ran over to where the crows were flocking. I ran there in order to drive a horrible idea out of my mind. I definitely hadn't wanted this. There was no way I would ever wish for this, even by mistake. This was not. When they noticed my vicious approach, the crows flapped upwards, fleeing into the sky. When the crows' big black bodies flew away, they exposed the garbage bag. What did we do? What did we do? What happened? Who did? What happened? What happened? Hello? Hello? What happened? There is nothing here to Nipa about. What had I seen there? The scream had escaped my throat before I understood what I was looking at. What was this? Satoko came over as well. No! Don't come over! No! Oh, this is just getting worse. Satoko came over after realizing something had happened. Abort! Push her down the stairs! And she looked over my shoulder, and she screamed as well. This wasn't... The garbage bag was crimson, dyed in fresh blood. Enough of this stupid roundabout way of saying it. That's right, yes. Yes! It was Rika-chan, our friend, Satoko's best friend. Always easygoing, clever as a cat, but so cute you couldn't hate her. Our friend, Rika-chan, Rika-chan was stark naked. That's putting it lightly. That's not the issue here. She was face up, limbs sprawled. Her eyes were like glass, just staring up into the sky. And
Rika!
Satoko broke down crying on the spot, and yet she still couldn't approach her friend's remains. The crows had gotten through the garbage bag and they dragged out an apple peel and spread it all over. No, the crows, they couldn't do this. On the spot, I started vomiting. The sour taste became a bitter one as I threw up over and over again. Rika-chan, her stomach was cut wide open vertically, completely open. What happened? And from her open stomach, her organs, her bowels were dragged out like children's toys left all over the floor. This unbelievable sight induced oxygen deprivation in my brain. Colors left my vision and a pounding headache, dizzy, and I wanted to vomit. It was like the nightmarish remains of a ceremonial killing. Someone somewhere had killed Rika-chan, brought her here, laid her here with her limbs sprawled out, and then cut open her stomach and dragged out her intestines. Red and pink viscera were sticking out of her gut, and her intestines were scattered in every direction like it'd been fun. The entire ground was covered in an ocean of red and black. A few of the crows had hopped around inside that ocean. They walked through the sea of blood, leaving bloody footprints, and those footprints were several still stood left on Rika-chan's body. Those sinister prints made it seem more like a bizarre ritual killing. I may have wished for Takano-san, Coach, and Oishi to die, but I didn't remember ever wishing for Rika-chan's death. I stumbled backwards, then stepped on a newspaper. A newspaper in a place like this? The newspaper that was covered. Oh no! I had kept it wrapped up in my belt in order to carry Satoko, and that newspaper had fallen off. Jeez, don't scare me like that. I bent down to pick it up, and then Satoko looked at me with such disbelief as I'd never seen, and froze. She was looking straight at me, at the hatchet in my hand. Oh, God! How does this get worse? Satoko, trembling madly, backed away. She didn't care at all as she was exposing herself through the towel. She just trembled and tried to step back from the demon in front of her. Screaming weakly, Satoko began to run unsteadily. Run. Away, that is. The way she ran away, it was so weak, so slow, so if I wanted to go after her, I could have caught up. But if I tried to grab Satoko's shoulder or something right now, she might actually go crazy. So I had to follow her and try to clear this up. No, the hatchet's cake. Or wait, maybe the Rika we saw was cake.
死ねって思っただけで別に。
自分で何をしたか記憶に残っていないんでございましょう。そんな人の話なんか信用できるわけありませんわ。人を殺した時の記憶が欠落してるだけなんじゃありませんの。いや、記憶がないふりをしてるだけなんじゃありませんの。第一、そのナタは何なんですのよ。
Yes, what is that hatchet for? Keiichi Maibara?
説明してごらんなさいな。
これは
ほらほらほら、ケイイチさんは殺人鬼じゃありませんの。どうしてですの。ちょっと意地悪だったけど楽しくて優しい、一度は本当のいいかもしれないとまで思ったのに、どうしてそんな風になってしまったんですの。
It wasn't me! It wasn't me! I might have been able to fully answer each of Shitoko's questions at a time, but in this situation, explaining my innocence in such a short period of time was impossible. I mean, I didn't even know if I was really innocent anyway. At the very least, I killed Satoko's uncle. That was no body, but I killed him. Without a doubt. At that point, I was far from innocent. Ew. Sorry about that. At that point, I was far from innocent. And I wished Takano-san, Coach, and Oishi were dead. And that curse of mine was granted. When I wished for Takano-san to die, I didn't think of it as anything more than a normal thing you'd say to someone you didn't like. But when she actually did die, and I realized that if I wanted people to die, they would, and hoping it would happen again, I cursed Coach and Oishi to the same fate. So, even ignoring Takano-san's death, Coach's and Oishi's were completely premeditated crimes. Was I a killer, just like Satoko said? Was I unable to distinguish between illusion and reality, and turned into a demon without remembering it? Becoming a killer who carried out Oyashiro-sama's curse? No, that couldn't be. It was impossible. Ah, damn it! The very word impossible was impossible in Hinamizawa right now. How many freaking times have I said that word these past 3 days? Satoko had started crying again and was walking unsteadily. At first she felt like she was still running, but now it was like she was walking away, crying from someone bullying her.
どうしてこんなことになってしまったんですの。どうして
If there was an answer to that, then I wanted to know it too. Why? Why had it turned out like
ニー
this?
がいなくなってずっと寂しかったけど、圭一さんが転校してきてくれて、またみんな明るくなって、楽しくなって、毎日が光ってたのに。
Yeah, she was right. These days were bright and beautiful, and yet, after that, Satoko and I shouted the exact same thing.
どうして
こんなことに。
The cicadas were sneering at the spectacle, our strange game of tag. Shut up, shut up, shut up! Eventually I heard the murmuring of a stream. The forest parted and a suspension bridge appeared. Satoko was crossing dangerously, wobbling as though she might fall at any moment. And when I stepped onto the bridge, it swayed a lot, causing Satoko to stagger and fall on the spot. Dude, what are you doing? Stop! Oh my god!
近寄らないで。この人殺し。
Satoko shouted, her hatred made very clear. It was sad. If words could cut, then this warmth flowing from my eyes would have been blood for sure.
どうしてこうなってしまったんですの。ケンチさんのこと大好きだったのに。
I wanted to go up and give her a hand, but the distance between us was uncrossable. If I got any closer, Satoko would start shouting again and say things that would hurt me deeply again. Oh, poor fucking baby. So I couldn't approach any closer than this.
サトコ、俺にもなんでこうなったかわからないんだ。でもこれだけは言える。 リカちゃんを殺したのは俺じゃないんだ。それだけは絶対に。
いい加減なこと言わないでほしいですわ。自分の記憶にも自信が持てない人が何を言ったってどう信じればいいって言うんですの。
I tightened my hands into fists. This was mortifying. I wasn't crazy. Hinamizawa was crazy ever since I wandered into it, lost on that one night. This insane world where I was at a festival when I wasn't, and the uncle I killed was alive, where death would come just by wishing for it. It was this world's fault. Miata and Rena started acting strangely, and they were possessed by something too, and Coach wouldn't believe anything I had to say. And even Satoko, who I should have protected, was yelling at me like this. Was the price for killing a man supposed to be this high? Was I really going to be forced to stay in such a bitter world? I did the right thing. At least I wanted to. So then, why? I hated it. Every time I asked why, the days Satoko and I enjoyed in peace went so wrong.
サトコ、信じてくれ。
Oh man, they got a real good piece of music for this, didn't they?
俺は人殺しじゃない。
ではそのナタは何なんですの。納得のいく説明はできまして。
このナタが怖いのか。
I don't know. Do you guys think that a girl who just saw her best friend's guts splayed out on a ritual altar, do you think she might be a little scared of a man waving around a very sharp and dangerous looking hatchet? Do you think that might weigh on her just a little fucking bit?
じゃあ捨てるよ。それなら安心だろ。
Satoko didn't nod, but she seemed to be in agreement with the proposition. I clumsily shook the hatchet out of my belt and dropped it over the side of the bridge into the stream below.
捨てたぞ。これで話を聞いてくれるな。
武器を捨てたぐらいで気を許すと思いまして。圭一さんほどの方なら私を捨てて絞め殺すなんて簡単でしょうに。
Like hell I would ever want to kill Satoko, you idiot.
じゃあどうしたらいい。両手を頭の上で組んだらいいか。
そうですわね。両手を頭の上で組んで後ろを向いてくださいます。
It was a cunning plan, much like those ones she used during club activities. Putting my hands on my head, turning away would mean that I couldn't attack Satoko very easily. I immediately acquiesced to her request, since it would make her feel better.
これでいいか。俺の話を聞いてくれ。
Satoko stood up and carefully approached me from behind, and then she actually came right up behind me. She was so close, and yet I was so sad that I wasn't allowed to turn
圭
around.
一さんが悪くないのはなんとなくうすうす分かっていましたわ。
え？
多分あなたは何か悪いものに乗り移られただけなんですの。さっきまでは圭一さんが殺人鬼なんだと思ってたけど、私分かりましたの。あなたの目を見ていたら。
I could hear the Satoko was still crying, but her voice was gentle just the
圭
same.
一さんが人殺しなんかするわけがない。圭一さんの体を何か悪いものが乗っ取って悪事に駆り立てただけ。
Was she speaking literally right now, or was she trying to admonish me? I couldn't
思え
tell.
ばひょっとするとあの人たちも圭一さんと同じものに乗り移られていたのかもしれない。あの時は殺されるとしか思わなかったから、そこまでは考えが及ばなかったけど、今ならわかる。あれは乗り移った何か悪いものの仕業だった。
サトコ、何の話だ。
It was like she was talking to me, and more like it was less like she was talking to me, and more like she was talking to herself, like she was confessing at my
分
back.
かってるんですの。身に覚えがないわけじゃないんですのよ。
Beg your pardon? Satoko's voice started to become mixed with sobs. Her pained voice tore at my heart, but I didn't know what Satoko was talking
西
about.
宮殿の屋根によじ登ったことがありますの。何年も前のことですわ。
Once, when Satoko was playing hide-and-seek on the shrine grounds, she climbed onto the roof of the storehouse and ritual implements, which everyone said not to go near, and hid. Then Satoko saw she could get in, through a window meant for ventilation. For Satoko, the word curse was plenty scary, but she was more curious about what was inside the unknown storehouse. She removed the grating on the window, which was already hanging off, slid her small body into it, and climbed down inside. It was too dark to see much, but after descending, she realized just how high up she'd been. Despite the darkness, she could see a few things around her thanks to the faint light coming through the air of the window. And to her disappointment, it was just a regular old storehouse. She tried to leave, but the door was locked tight from the outside, and it was made to not open from within. She would have to go back out through the ventilation window she came in from. But the window was high on the wall, and there was no way she would be able to climb back up. Satoko desperately tried not to cry and racked her brain thinking of a way to get up there. There were a lot of birdcage-like looking things hanging from chains in the ceiling. She took the hanging chains and strung them along the wall. If she climbed up the bundle of chains, she might be able to manage to climb up the ventilation window. There was nothing else she could do, so she had to try. And try she did. It was dark and creepy, and she didn't want to stay here forever. The more she thought about that, the more she panicked. She climbed the bundle of chains. Satoko could hear the clinks and clangs of everything creaking under her weight. And then, just as her hand reached the window, one of the metal fixtures she'd used to stick chains on the wall flew off, and the chains all began to pull loudly, furiously, every which way. Spurred on by the sounds behind her, she managed to get back onto the roof out through the window. Because of the weight of the flailing bundle of chains, the other fixtures broke. And then one of the big bird cages hanging from the ceiling fell to the floor with a huge noise. Under it was an image of Oyashiro-sama, his vessel, and the cage took off one of its arms, then trapped some implements beneath it. It didn't take very long for her to grow scared of what she had done. The deafening noise could be heard from the rest of the shrine grounds. A few other children heard it and gathered around. And of course, Rika was one of them. Then Rika's father, the shrine's priest, with an angry look, ran over. And then, as for what happened next, it was painful to remember. The only one who knew where Rika's parents kept the key to the ritual storehouse was Rika. So he scolded her, saying that this happened because Rika pulled a prank and hid me in there. He was very angry and menacing. Just looking at him was enough to frighten anyone. He exposed Rika's back, took a strangely sharp ritual cane or something, and struck her with it several times. Rika's words at the time, "It wasn't me, I'm sorry. That pitiful voice, I still can't get it out of my head. I should have said it was me. I should have said so, to save my best friend from that false accusation, without being afraid of Rika's father's terrible temper." Rika gritted her teeth and cried at the crime she didn't remember doing. Ever since then, the world has been strange.
わかってるんですの、私には。これは、お社様のたたりだって。あの時、西宮殿を怪我して、親友を見捨てた私への天罰だって。
お社様のたたり。
父も母も、濁流に消えた。意地悪だったおばも死んだけど、誰よりも私を可愛がってくれたニーニーも、私を捨てて、家出してしまった。そして、圭一さんが転校してきて、やっと楽しい毎日が戻ってきたと思ったのに、今度は圭一さんが取り憑かれて、リカも殺されて。聞いたの、私。お社様は本当にたたりをなすときは本人をすぐに殺さないんだって。親しい人から順に殺して、みんな殺してから最後に殺すんだって。だから圭一さんもたたりにやられて、きっと今度はレナさんやミオンさんがたたられてしまうんですわ。そして殺したり殺されたり。
落ち着けよサトコ。たたりなんかない。誰もお前をいじめたりなんかしないって。
When I turned around, I was thrust away with an amazing force. Given my hands were awkwardly placed on my head, I couldn't take the fall and lost my balance. And I had been pushed not into the bridge, but to the side. Towards the stream. No, this can't be happening. As one last miracle, I was allowed to grab a cord hanging from the bridge. Far below me was the stream. We were pretty high up, and below were rocks of all sizes. I think Satoko deserves so much better in a lot of worlds. I think that, like, of all the trauma that we've seen so far, at least, she's obviously the one that has had it the worst. If I fell, it clearly wouldn't be pretty. The entire bridge was tilting under my body's weight. My frail little grip probably wouldn't last another minute before my fingers had to let go. I didn't understand myself what I meant by shouting her name then. Was I asking her to save me, or was I asking her why she did this? Finally, everything came back into focus and I saw Satoko. And I was surprised at what an odd expression she had. It was the first time I'd seen it. It was an expression of righteous anger meant only for those who needed to die. Whoa! Oh. As she screamed, she jerked the bridge to and fro. She didn't have to do that. I was going to fall anyway.
私はお前なんかには負けないんですのよ。たたりなんかに負けてたまるもんですか。お前になんか絶対に負けない。みんなを奪ったお前に絶対に負けたりなんかしない。
サトコ、これだけは聞いてくれ。
I don't know what my face looked like at the time, but it seemed like it was enough to quell Satoko's agitation.
確かに褒められるものじゃない。
You think? You think?
いや、いけないことだったかもしれない。だけど、お前に幸せになってほしくってしたことだったんだ。それだけは信じてくれ。
最後の最後でケイイチさんのふりを。
Satoko didn't seem to have any more desire to listen to what I had to say. And for that to happen at the very end like this was
お
tragic.
前に褒められたくてやったわけじゃなかった。お前に幸せになってさえもらえればよかった。俺たちはダメなんだ。お前が笑っていないとダメなんだ。
Yep. He's still to the bitter end being the biggest fucking dumbass.
だから俺が消えたら笑ってくれ。俺が死ぬことで新しい生活を迎えたならきっと笑ってくれ。それだけ約束してくれないか。
喋るな。ケイイチさんの口調で喋るな。おじを追ってしまえ。
And those were the last words Satoko ever said to me. Those sad, tragic, and altogether unrewarding words. What on earth was I? My desire to make Satoko happy ended up like this. Where did I first go wrong? And what was the mistake I made? When did I make it? Was I the crazy one, or was it Hinamizawa? Even after all this, I thought I wasn't crazy at all. It was the eerie world that was crazy. This world I'd accidentally wandered into one night. Because that fun world where I'd never doubted all the crazy times we had as a club would go on forever. It couldn't possibly have transformed into such an abnormal world. That fun world wouldn't have ever ended with this, with Satoko pushing me to my death. In the end, I was going to be swallowed up by this crazy world and disappear. No, I'd probably already disappeared. Yes, probably on the night of Watanagashi. I'm sure that in the world I really belonged to, I had vanished that night, and everyone was worried. It was laughable that I had taken this long to figure out I wasn't around anymore. Oyashiro-sama's curse on the 5th year was Satoko's uncle dying and me disappearing. In the real world, Satoko had already been freed. Maybe my friends were all lamenting my disappearance and valiantly trying to get back on their feet. And even though they were down to 4 people, the club would reopen and they would have a good time without me, waiting for the day when I would come back. I'm sorry, everyone. I couldn't come back home, but this is what I wished for. It was my wish for Satoko's smile and my duty as her Nini. At this point, there will be nobody left to torture you, because Satoshi and I, it took 2 years, but we succeeded. That annoying toothy smile of yours, we wanted to see it one more time. Yeah, the murdering probably had something to do with it. My pain wasn't gentle or merciful. It was a sharp pain, violent, powerful, and ruthless. What little compassion I had receded in the span of a moment. And now I could die. I could say goodbye to this insane world. Farewell, crazed Hinamizawa. Thanks for giving me the psychic power to kill people whenever I wanted. If you'll still allow it, I'll wish for one last thing. The death of this very world, of this crazed Hinamizawa, so that nobody will ever again have to find themselves lost here again. But we got a tip. We got a tip. It's a research note. We're not done. Well, what do we got? We got a tip. It's a research note. Let's check it out. Oyashiro-sama. Nobody really knows what characters to use to write Oyashiro-sama. Knowing this is hard, partly because, depending on the time period, he has also been called with various titles, with subtle changes in his name, and nobody knows the real one. The only thing all time periods agree on is that the 4 syllables O-ya-shi-ro are always used. There is a theory stating that the shrine of Yashiro, dedicated to Oyashiro-sama itself, became the object of worship, and that people began calling it Oyashiro-sama, or Lord Honorable Shrine. But this doesn't make a bit of sense. I don't know whether this is related, but people say the Furude family, the most respected bloodline in terms of worshipping Oyashiro-sama, actually inherited his blood. And in the legend of the Furude family passes down, if for 8 generations in a row the firstborn child is a girl, the 8th daughter will be the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama. If we go by this legend, the characters used for Oyashiro-sama's name should be O for honorable, Ya for 8, and Shiro for generation. These characters' assignments are simply something I've thought up. There is no way to verify it. If this is true, then Oyashiro-sama would have been named as such under the assumption that he would come again. The second coming of an object of worship can be seen in several religions, so it isn't unusual. But a few of these religions call the second coming of their object of worship a day of judgment, or something along those lines, and we must not forget that they mean it as the end of the world. Rika Furude, pampered and loved dearly by the elderly folk in the village. The rumors say she is the 8th generation, and Oyashiro-sama. I don't know. I do not know the family tree of the Furudes, but at the very least, I can confirm that the past 2 generations, the first child has been a girl. Rika Furude watches over Hinamizawa. If the village was to lose her protection, what would happen? Would peace between man and demon be lost? Would it once again create a hellish landscape where man-eating demons ran rampant? A gruesome feast of the demons who suddenly remembered how delicious the weak humans were, who could only cry, scream, and run for their lives. What would that look like? Just imagining it is enough to make my heart pound with excitement. All right. So we're going to be right back, and then we're going to hit up the second half of this. We're going to wrap things up when we come back. So I'll be back in like 5 or so minutes. In the meantime, everybody get up, stretch out a bit, and we'll get things sorted when we come back. How we feeling out there? How we feeling out there in Higurashi land? We doing okay? We doing okay out there? Are we ready to wrap everything up? Not quite the happy ending, I think. I really thought we had it this time. I really thought we were going to have the happy ending. I thought everything was going to turn out A-okay. Turns out, Keiichi Maebara is just real bad at this. Doing just fine. Well, all right. Well, no point in dilly-dallying. Let's get this show started. Where do we go from here? What happens now? My head was pounding. The sky was bright. It was cold, too. It hurt. Each sensation I felt led to a new and different one awakening. When I came to, I was lying face first in the dry riverbed. A few body parts hurt a lot. The skin over a bunch of my joints was torn, turned blue or red and oozing blood. I could tell it was my bones that were in pain from the agony I felt whenever I moved. I looked up and saw how high the bridge was from where I had fallen. Considering I dropped from there, it was a miracle that I could open my eyes again. Right next to me was a broken upside-down car seat, which I guessed some pranksters had brought here. Maybe this thing had been conveniently lying right under me, allowing me to escape instant death. Miraculous. Of course, I didn't know whether this was a miracle, was fortunate or unfortunate. I'd failed to die, and now I was still stuck in this insane world. How long had I been unconscious for? The sun was high in the sky, so it looked like 1 or 2 hours had passed, but my body's sluggishness didn't make it feel at all like a short time had gone by. Mentally, I felt like I'd been asleep here for a decade. No, the more feeling returned to my body, the more pain flowed in. It hurt so much it would have been better not to have woken up. I needed to get to a doctor. Yeah, to Coach's clinic. The term Coach's clinic brought memories back one after another. Memories I wish I hadn't recalled. Satoko was no longer on the bridge. She would have returned to Hinamizawa by now, and she would put on some clothes, go to the clinic, get a checkup, and report on how crazy I had seemed. The police were waiting for me without a doubt. This time, would they find out for real that I'd killed her uncle and arrest me, or would they just send me to a mental institution like I thought they might? Still, I didn't care which it was. Please, someone stop all this pain. You can boil me or cook me after that, whatever you want. I began to walk unsteadily, just limping along. I went downstream and then through the animal trail-like path in the woods. I walked haphazardly, searching for a path I knew. Eventually, I came across a familiar road and set off towards the clinic. Not to my house, but to the clinic, that had treated me like a lunatic. It was hot and humid. There was no wind, and the air was stagnant. For a while now, I had been smelling this terrible stench of burned eggs, and it made my face scrunch up. And then, at last, I noticed something. I couldn't hear any cicadas. It was for the first time I had heard Hinamizawa be so utterly silent. When I went back, it seemed like the birds always chirped in the morning, cicadas always cried loudly in the afternoon, and Higurashi always rose up in chorus in the evening. Always something to hear. I couldn't hear a single insect. The only thing I could hear was the rustling of the wind brushing the treetops. I'd never experienced this sort of quiet before. Even the only sound coming from the trees lacked life somehow. The trees were yellow, and many leaves were spread across the ground despite it being too early for autumn. Even the weeds that had been growing so persistently at the side of the road had yellowed, browned, and lost their vigor. What is going on? Only the sunlight itself was of the June Hinamizawa I knew, and yet it seemed like the seasons had switched all of a sudden. Looking at the fallen leaves and rotting weeds led me to a few small insects turned on their backs. They weren't moving. They were corpses. I looked closer to see insect corpses scattered all around, like a child had collected them as samples and then strewn them about. The stench, what was it? It was terrible, like burned eggs. Combined with all the bug corpses and leaves falling on the trees in the summer, had someone sprayed herbicides or pesticides around here? Even at school, we apparently fumigate. They call pest disinfection or something once or twice a year. I hadn't run into anybody despite how bright it was outside. It was mid-afternoon, and yet it felt like I were sauntering about at midnight. With this smell, nobody would want to be walking around outside. Just what was this, anyway? There was no sound, no noise, not even a breath. Hinamizawa was silent. The school would come into view right after turning this corner, and yet I couldn't hear any commotion at all. None of the shouts or grunts the children always made. It was simply quiet. Just as pretending to ignore the silence had grown intolerable, I saw the school. And finally I heard something. It was the sound of a few trucks. There were very few tall trucks parked in the schoolyard idling. About 10 workers in raincoats were unloading things from their trunks. It was hot and humid, even in my casual clothing. I couldn't imagine how unbearable that must have been. And then I remembered. Our school was rented from the Forest Service field office building, wasn't it? It was in exchange for all the Forest Service trucks to be doing some kind of work in the schoolyard. Besides, what did the Forest Rangers do anyway? I felt bad for them having to work in such heat and with such with such a stench about. They were taking colorful cargo out of the truck and lining it up in the schoolyard. They were containers, fairly large ones, inside multicolored patchwork bags. Heavy too. They were being carried in pairs. They lined them up very neatly, like tuna in a riverside fish market. Several, dozens, hundreds of tuna were completely filling a fairly wide schoolyard up. I forgot my pain for a little while, captivated by this big forest ranger job I'd never seen before. As I stood there watching in a daze, the people in raincoats working on the other side noticed me. One of them pointed me out and they shouted a few things back and forth. I thought they might yell at me for getting in their way, so I decided to leave post-haste. But then 2 trucks drove up behind me. I stepped aside and they entered the schoolyard. Sheets covered their trunks so I could tell they were completely full. As they passed, there was an awful smell that made me want to choke. It wasn't the same burned egg smell as before, but an even worse one, like rotten crab meat. What on earth was it? I'd been enshrouded in one terrible stench after another all day. Then certain white letters emblazoned on the side of the passing trucks caught my eye. Ground Self-Defense Forces. GSDF. Big Thinky Dinky. What? Self-Defense Forces? Like the army? Why was the army in the schoolyard?
Oi, Kimi. どこから入ってきた?
Suddenly, someone slapped me on the shoulders from behind. I turned around and a canopied SDF Jeep was parked there. The SDF person had on a green raincoat and gas mask like in the movies, carrying a compressed air cylinder. He didn't look normal. There wasn't an inch of exposed skin anywhere. When I tried to talk, I stretched a wound in my head. I made the SDF people exchange glances. I couldn't see their faces through their face masks, but they seemed surprised.
ひなみ様の住民か? 住所と名前は言えるか?
一応ここに住んでますけど。
I sort of live here?
名前は前原圭一です。あ、住所は獅子骨市ひなみ沢村。
After seeing me tell them my name and address, without hesitation, one of the SDF people watching from the Jeep started talking into a radio.
応答願います。本部、応答願います。402生存者発見。
Excuse me?
繰り返す。402生存者発見。
Hello?
場所は営林署入り口前。
This is base. We copy. Secure the survivor at once. What is his
生
status?
存者は健在。全身に外傷を認められるも生命に支障なし。自立歩行可能。これより保護し本部へ送致します。
I was prepared to go along with the police, but the SDF, I couldn't help but think it seemed a little bit much. They urged me into the back of the Jeep, and then they told me to put on this gigantic gas mask. I did so, and one of the troops fiddled around with it, strapping it tightly to me. It was heavy, hard to see out of, hot, and difficult to breathe. Just looking at the world through the lenses made it lose its sense of reality. My breathing sounded like some giant monster through the mask. At this point, I had no idea what was happening. With much trepidation, I asked the trooper adjusting my mask.
すみません。何かあったんですか？
君はどこにいたんだ？何をしていたんだ？
Hey, don't answer a question with more questions. I was the one
ず
asking
っと
you.
山に入ったところにある吊り橋から落っこちて河原で多分気絶してました。今日が何曜日かもよくわからないです。
今日は昭和58年の6月22日水曜日だ。
That surprised me. Satoko pushed me off the bridge on Tuesday the 21st. That meant I'd been asleep in the riverbed for an entire
改めて
day.
聞きますけど何があったんですか？なんで自衛隊が来てるんです？何かの訓練ですか？
Had my question been that difficult for him? None of the troopers would answer me. The one in the driver's seat talking on his own radio turned on the vehicles. He turned on the dial and some broadcast station or another came in. I started to listen to the voice of the radio announcer I was familiar
より
with.
首相官邸で行われました。記者団からの自衛隊の災害出動が迅速に行われなかったことが前例のない未曾有の大災害に直結したのではないかとの質問に対し、奥野官房長官は次のようにコメントしました。
でありまして、県知事からの派遣要請を受けて迅速に対応したものと思っております。
とこのように述べ、要請を受けてからの自衛隊の出動は迅速であった。むしろ県側の事態把握に遅れがあった可能性を示唆しました。そもそも自衛隊の派遣を要請した県知事は、災害発生から前例のない大災害であることをいつ認識できたのか、そして災害派遣要請までにいわゆるお役所的なロスタイムが生じ、被害の拡大を招いたのではないか、今後の究明が待たれています。首相官邸より報道部の尾形記者がお送りしました。さて、ここでもう一度災害発生からの行政の対応を振り返ります。
In the middle of the night, between June 21st and June 22nd, a large-scale disaster broke out in Hidemazawa village, Shishibone. The details have not yet been investigated, but there was an eruption of volcanic gas from somewhere in the Hidemazawa area. The gas was relatively heavy. As it spewed out, it began to flow. The flow went down along a small river and headed directly into Hidemazawa village. After a few hours, it had covered the entire region. It happened in the middle of the night, 2 to 4 a.m. Every home and household in the village was afflicted. With most of the residents asleep, it is thought that they all died without noticing the crisis. The catastrophe striking in the middle of the night caused its detection to come too late. But there was still one small opportunity to have noticed it. 3 a.m. A news dealer's shop in Okinomiya sent a vehicle carrying the morning newspaper to its branch office in Hidemazawa. Usually the shop would be contacted upon the vehicle's arrival, but this morning that didn't happen. The news dealer's shop made repeated calls but got no response. The shopkeeper sent his eldest son to check on things, but they lost contact with him as well.
非常に悔やまれています。この時点で警察か消防への連絡があったなら、事態はもっと改善されていた可能性が高いでしょう。少なくとも村全滅という惨劇は免れた可能性があります。
6 a.m. Residents in areas in the same region began continuously calling 119 to report the smell of rotten eggs, dizziness, nausea, and headaches. The fire department received the same reports, all from the same confined location. Confined location. They speculated a truck loaded with chemicals may have gotten into an accident and reported it to the local police. 6:30 a.m. Contact was lost with a patrol car on duty in the Hidemazawa area after the officer reported the smell of rotten eggs. The local police considered the possibility of a large-scale disaster involving highly lethal gas and reported it to the prefecture and prefectural police at 7:15 a.m. 8 a.m. The governor was traveling to a nearby prefectures for inspection, so in accordance with regulations, the prefectural environmental disaster prevention chief was provisionally escalated to Director General and set up a disaster containment countermeasures office. However, without contacting the governor, the countermeasures came too late.
近年市民団体によって指摘されていますが、議員待遇者との視察旅行は完全に親睦を目的にしたもので、主演三昧だと噂されています。近い筋の話では、知事は徹夜で飲んだくれて泥酔状態で就寝していたそうです。環境部長から電話があった時も泥酔していて、全く取り合ってもらえなかったのだそうです。
Oof! Big oof! And so, it took about an hour for the governor to sober up, gain an understanding of the situation, and gather
知事は言う
information.
に及びませんが、知事不在時には本部長を務めることになる環境部長にも怠慢の責任が問われるでしょう。また、県としても大災害を想定したマニュアルが用意されておらず、対応が常に後手に回ってしまったのが致命的でした。
9:12 a.m. On the advice of prefectural police, the governor requested a disaster relief mission from the SDF. By the time the chemical defense unit equipped with protective equipment arrived on the scene, 8 hours had already passed since the incident's
とにか
outbreak.
く深夜の就寝中というのが不運でした。同じ災害でも日中に起こっていれば全く違ったでしょう。
All households in the Hinamazawa village region were wiped out. There were over 1,000 victims. The SDF is still confirming the situation on the ground, but the results are predicted to only increase that
スタジオ
number.
にはゲストとして火山性の災害にお詳しい地学博士の藤原先生にお越しいただいております。先生、このような恐ろしい毒ガスが突然湧き出すようなことはあるのでしょうか。
火口部に限定して申し上げれば決して珍しいことではありません。火山大国日本にはたくさんの活火山がありますが、それらの火口部はいずれも危険なガスの噴出する危険性があり、一般登山者も火口部周辺には立ち入らないのが一般的です。
Yeah, that's likely the case, is that he kind of just got lucky and fell. And was probably like below where whatever happened, like the gas likely permeated and kind of just stayed in the air and likely just never went down to where he had
では
fallen
今回
to.
南沢村を襲った卵のフラン臭のするガスというのも火口部では一般的なガスということですか。
卵のフラン臭という特徴から、おそらく火山ガスの中でも事故例の多い硫化水素によるものだと考えられます。高い濃度であれば非常に危険なものです。
南沢村は火山の火口部とは全く縁遠い場所にあるわけですが、そういった火口部でない場所にもその硫化水素が発生することがあるのでしょうか。
詳しいことが分かっていないので、まだはっきりとしたことは申し上げられませんが、外国の例で温泉の地下のマグマだまりからガスが噴出したという記録があります。極めて希少な例ですが、必ずしも火口部でなくても発生の可能性はあるということです。
先生、ありがとうございました。今防衛庁から発表があった模様です。防衛庁の森川さん。
はい、防衛庁です。先ほど防衛庁は南沢村ガス災害の主原因となった火山性ガスについて、陸上自衛隊科学学校での分析の結果、二酸化炭素と硫化水素の混合ガスによるものだったと発表しました。
森川さん、そのガスは依然として噴出を続け、周囲に拡大しているのですか。
That's a dude voice on the other line there. We kind of goofed that one up. Probably want to go back and check your scripts on that one.
現在、南沢村で救助活動に入っている自衛隊第9師団の報告として、ガスの濃度は徐々に薄まりつつある。これ以上の被害の拡大はないと発表しました。ですが依然、南沢村地区は危険な状態にあることには変わりなく、今後も注意深く監視を続ける必要があるようです。
防衛庁から報道部の森川記者がお伝えしました。続きまして、避難を余儀なくされている沖宮地区住民の模様をリポートします。現在 避難所の一つとなっている下篠崎小学校に報道部の現地記者がお伝えいたします。
何ですかそれ。
Inside the jeep, clamoring and bouncing along the rough road, none answered my muttered questions. An unprecedented catastrophe had destroyed Hinamizawa in a single night. Where was Hinamizawa village anyway? Someplace deep in the mountains, right? Names of places I'd heard about on the radio were always like that. They were all places I'd never heard of, much less knew the locations of. Wiped out? What does that mean? Don't they usually say how many died and how many were injured? How many people were alive? Where did everyone evacuate to? Eventually we came into view of Coach's clinic. For the first time I saw a flag of Japan hanging on the pole outside. Japan's circular sun hung down as though exhausted. Many SDF tents were set up in the clinic's big parking lot, and many strict security vehicles were parked there as well. When they saw the jeep coming, the men in white clothing and gas masks came running over to the clinic, frantic, carrying a stretcher.
もう大丈夫だよ。具合は歩けるかい？
歩けます。あいてて。
And because of my owls, they forced me to lay on the stretcher anyway. People who seemed like doctors were looking at me and notifying others of my condition via radio.
外傷多数。骨折もしくは内臓損傷の可能性大。頭部に大きな裂傷。瞳孔正常。眼底に出血なくも脳内損傷の可能性は否定できず。
And then from the clinic entrance, people lying in stretchers were brought outside to replace me. Judging by their clothing, they were from Hinamizawa, and that's how I knew they were victims. Brought by the stretchers in front of it, they brought the stretchers by in front of the truck. Two troops holding shoulders and legs, like kind of a baggage, picked them up and threw them onto the truck. In the trunk of the truck, people's bodies piled in heaps. They were all like baggage, and they had told me already nothing but shells. At that moment, I remembered all those colorful sacks filling the trunks, and then lined up in the schoolyard like a fish market, hundreds of empty shells, corpses, 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 corpses.
バカ！犠牲者を粗末に扱うな。彼は村の住民だぞ。
The troops carrying the sacks answered me with a humble salute. The world didn't need this insane version of Hinamizawa. My final wish, again, it was granted. I don't understand anything anymore. None of it mattered. I wished, I cursed, and then it happened the next day. Then please, tomorrow morning, let me die. That insane night, it's still going on. Please, please, end it already.
おい、意識が損失したぞ。患者の名前を呼びかけろ。早く。
前原君、聞こえるかい？聞こえるなら瞬きでいいからしてくれ。前原君、前原君、前原君。
Suddenly, the world didn't matter to me anymore. I wasn't interested in their
呼吸が
cries.
停止したぞ。気道確保。人工呼吸。絶対に生かせ。畜生、畜生。もうこれ以上死者はごめんだぞ。死んでもいい命なんかないんだ。殺すな。殺すな。
I could hear the voice of a man crying and screaming in my ears. Nobody deserves to die. Those words came from his heart. And they soaked into my heart too. Maybe it was a mistake to take someone's life, even if it was to save Satoko. If this is the price I had to pay, this horrible tragedy, then this is a little much, Oyashiro-sama. Why? Why did you never punish me? Come to think of it, Satoko said something. Oyashiro-sama's actual curse never goes for the target at first, but kills everyone they love before that. Oyashiro-sama's curse. It was a convenient excuse I told myself at the very end, that it wasn't my curse that destroyed it, but Oyashiro-sama's. Given that I was on a stretcher, the next bit might have been obvious. But last of all, I realized one thing. Yeah, today I had not heard those footsteps following me. Even once. And now I was liberated. As the cries of the Higurashi I couldn't have been hearing filled my mind. This tearful ensemble was the only funeral march I had. June 22nd, 1983, early morning. A widespread disaster occurred in Hinamizawa Village, Shishibone Prefecture. Volcanic gas, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide erupted from Onigifuchi Swamp, one of the Hinamizawa area's water sources, and spread through the entire village. There were 1,200 victims. 20 have gone missing. The catastrophe was unprecedented, forcing local governments to evacuate approximately 600,000 people. According to later investigations, magma pools and hot springs were uncovered directly under Onigifuchi Swamp, and the gas gushed from it was determined to be the cause of the disaster. In addition, directly after the incident broke out, many came forth claiming the disaster was a curse based on the Hinamizawa legends, first sparking a wave of chaos. There were apparently local legends of a curse spreading a miasma, destroying the village, and some scholars believe a similar gas disaster must have happened in the past and remained part of those legends. More extreme periodicals suggested that this was an extension of a stream of freak death incidents that had been happening in recent years in Hinamizawa Village, stirring interest in theories about the curse of Oyashiro-sama. In addition, relatives of those in Hinamizawa who had escaped the disaster complained of sickness afterwards and were hospitalized. Some of them even died of unknown causes, further encouraging such extreme opinions. On top of that, several relatives professing to be possessed by Oyashiro-sama's curse committed suicide in strange ways. And the impact the disaster has had on the entire nation can no longer be ignored. Wild visions of terrible toxic gas sneaking around in the middle of the night, killing people, spilled across the country, causing a steady stream of people complaining about insomnia, difficulty breathing, headache, dizziness, etc. Some who identified themselves as being obsessed by it began doing odd things. Most of these were mistakenly attributed by the tabloid press, but afterward, some of them began to call the mental illness arising from the Hinamizawa tragedy the Hinamizawa syndrome. The Hinamizawa Village region, the object of all kinds of rumors and speculation, is currently closed off, and even flying overhead is prohibited. The prohibition was at one point undone as a result of a decree in a decrease in the gas's density, but that autumn another gas burst was confirmed, leading the area to be cordoned off again. Word is that the area is sound asleep, all traces of its former life intact and left to rot. Only one survivor remains, Keiichi Maebara, age something, who lived at blank Hinamizawa Village. At the time of rescue, he had trouble breathing due to fluid buildup in his lungs, and as a result of life-saving procedures, he was kept alive. He is currently in a general hospital somewhere in the prefecture. The press have been asking for him for some time, but all interviews are being refused. What did he see in Hinamizawa? What happened between June 21st and June 22nd in Hinamizawa Village? Today he remains silent, unwilling to speak of it. The Great Hinama Disaster in Memoriam List. Jiro Tomatake, real name unknown, possibly committed suicide in the village. This is going to go too fast for me to read, so I'm just going to let it scroll. Yeah, the oof list. It might be smart to go back and read that scrolling list sometime, by the way. Especially the victim stuff. There might be a clue or two in there. That's just my hint to you. I'm not saying there's anything definitive, but there might be something there worth keeping an eye on. June XX 2003. An elderly couple living in the Osaka prefecture discovered a cassette tape while organizing the possessions of their son, who passed away 8 years ago. Their son went missing when his fishing boat capsized in 1995. He was 47 at the time of his death. 8 years later, in 2003, they had begun to organize their son's remains in order to organize their minds and came across a cassette tape in question. From 1975 to 1989, the deceased had experienced working as a journalist for a photography periodical, and this tape is thought to have been created during that time. The label on the tape read 11/28/1983 Keiichi Maibara. It is thought the tape was recorded during an interview with Keiichi Maibara, the only survivor of the Great Hinamizawa disaster that occurred in June of 1983. As the only person who lived through the disaster on the night of June 21st, shrouded in mystery, many interested parties attempted to question him, but he never once spoke physically to anyone in a public place. Therefore, the tape caused quite a stir, possibly being of extremely high value.
なんだか録音されてると思うとすごく喋りにくいですね。
気にしない気にしない。ほら、こうすれば録音してるのも気にならないでしょ。
After this, the sound quality dramatically decreases. Did he cover the recording device with something?
じゃあ始めるね。まず最初の質問から。圭一君はあの大災害の夜どこにいたのかな？
神社から裏に抜けてずっと林道を進んで吊り橋があるんですよ。山に入る少し前に。そこから落ちて気を失ってました。
それは大災害の夜、つまり21日から22日にかけての深夜のこと？
いいえ、21日の火曜日の朝です。それで次の日の昼間に目を覚ましたわけですから。
どうしてそんなところに？誰もが持つ疑問だけど、当日は平日で、しかも落ちた橋は君の家と学校から。
Yeah, why'd you fall from that bridge? What were you doing down there? What were you doing down there, you little scamp?
ざっくばらんに言って、君が大災害の発生を事前に知っていて、村から逃げる途中に吊り橋から落ちたんじゃないかっていう声もあるんだけど。
冗談じゃないです。勝手なことを言わないでください。
私も随分ひどい言い分だと思うよ。気を悪くしないでね。さて、次に圭一君が落ちたという吊り橋なんだけど、地図で言うとここだよね。神社の裏から林道を抜けて至る吊り橋というのは。
多分、俺もあんまり行かないところなので自信はないですが。
そんなに行かないところにどうして平日の朝に行ったのか疑問は尽きないけどな。それでこの君が気絶していたという河原なんだけど、実はそれ
ありえない。またありえないですか。まだ。
For a little while, Keiichi Maibara mutters the word impossible several times.
ありえないと。
火山ガスが発生したのは鬼ヶ淵という沼なのは知ってるよね。それで学者の先生が緻密な模型を使ってシミュレーションをしたら興味深いことが分かったんだってさ。例の火山ガスってのは空気よりも重いらしくて、地形に沿って 低いところへ低いところへ流れ込む水みたいな性質があるんだってさ。それで発生源の鬼ヶ淵沼からそういうガスが噴出し、どれくらいの時間をかけて村を覆うのか実験がされたんだ。そしたらさ、君が気絶していたという河原、流れ込むんだよ、ガスが。
よく言ってる意味がわからないんですが。
つまり君が本当にこの河原で気絶していたなら、君は丸一晩猛毒の火山ガスの中にいたことになるんだよ。だからつまり君がここで気絶をしていた可能性は否定されたわけさ。もっとざっくばらんに言うよ。私はね、君が嘘をついているんじゃないかなって思うんだ。君は大災害の時、安全なところに身を潜めていて、ガスが薄れた頃合いを見計らって村に現れて自衛隊の人に本を。
That's fucked up.
どうかな？図星かな？
For a short time, the journalist presses Keiichi Maibara further in a teasing way, but all that can be heard are heavy sighs.
仮にそうだったとしても。
驚かないとはどういう意味だい？
Was this recording really taken of Keiichi Maibara? Some harbor suspicions.
ありえないって。あのひなみ沢ではありえないことなんていくらでも起こるんです。あそこじゃいないはずの場所に人がいる。死んだはずの人が生きてる。そんなこと珍しいことじゃないんですよ。まさか俺自身が死んだはずなのに生きているってやつを立証しようとはね。
Everybody laugh! It's good times! It's fun times! The journalist and Keiichi Maibara both laughed for a while. To verify the authenticity, okay. To verify its authenticity, I had the others in the Maibara family check the tapes with his voice on it. However, the sound was not clear, and much time had passed, so the relatives I checked with couldn't remember what he sounded like. I was unable to gain a positive proof that it was actually his voice.
あの大災害がひなみ沢連続開始事件の5年目のたたりではないかという話についてはどう思
う？いや、それはないですね。5年目のたたりは俺ですから。
え？何のこと？
何のことって、あんたの話に対する答えですよ。あの大災害は、まあ、言っても信じないでしょうけど。
Doubts also remain regarding the date 11/28 written on the tape.
俺が起こしたんです。俺がね、こんな村、丸ごと死んじまえって願ったから怒ったんです。
それは豪快な話だね。
豪快？そういう面白い言い方もあるんですね。高野さんも俺が殺したし、監督も大石も俺が殺した。
After Maibara Keiichi's failed suicide attempt on a certain August day, 2 months after the disaster, he was diagnosed with a mental disorder and transported to a treatment facility.
あの時の俺にはね、何か神がかり的な力が宿ってたんですよ。
The reporter sweats audibly.
そう。例えるなら、足音かな。
足音？って、なんだいそれ。
あんた、足音を聞いたこともないんですか？ペタペタ、ひたひた。あんたも今日からは歩いてるとき、不意に立ち止まってみると面白いですよ。
The facility never allowed any news coverage, so it's extremely unlikely that a tape from the media dated after August 1983 would have his voice on it.
それでね、自分がちゃんと立ち止まったにもかかわらず、足音が一つ余計に聞こえたなら 気をつけた方がいいですよ。
そうだね。気をつけるようにするよ。
そんなに俺、面白いこと話してますか？あんた、さっきからヘラヘラと笑ってばかりですね。
However, the reporter had been criticized for his forceful methods of collecting data while he was active, so there is still a possibility that he broke into the facility and forced Keiichi Maebara to talk.
監督と同じだ。俺のことを同情したり、話を聞いたりしてるふりをしながら、その実、人のことを異常者扱いしてる目だ。
そんなことはないよ。
いや、俺にはわかるんです。あんたの目は監督と同じだ。あの日以来、もう足音は聞こえない。
Is this truly Keiichi Maebara's voice? The authenticity of this recording is still wrapped in
だ
mystery.
から俺にはもう、あんな恐ろしい力は残ってないだろうけど、今ここでもう一度、あんたの死を願ってみる。俺に不愉快な話ばかりをする。あんたの死を。そうだな。今回は一つ、死に方も決めてみようかな。高野さんは焼け死にだったから。じゃああんたは逆に水だ。
Oh, damn.
水に溺れて死ぬってのはどうだい？絶好調だった当時の俺なら、次の朝までには必ず死んでる。
15 years after this tape was created, the reporter, just as Keiichi Maebara had predicted, died in an accident out of the sea.
さてあんたは何日後に水で死ぬかな。
Oh, hey! He's doing okay. He's all smiles. It's fine. He's okay. He's fine. Look at him. He's just an average, healthy, growing young boy.
あんたも気をつけろよ。俺ごときにたたり殺されるな。
Oh boy. Oh boy. The recording ends in the middle of Keiichi Maebara's laughter. And Keiichi Maebara, late on the night of 11/30/1983, 2 days after the interview, he suddenly died from a high fever, cause unknown. Records remain of the strange words he kept giving after the pressing, calling the button the day before he died. An extra set of footsteps.
また一つ余計に。
What could it be? Leave me the F alone! And the children laughter. That's good. And that is the conclusion of Tatarigoroshi. That's certainly a lot to take in. But as you know, we have one final order of business to take care of. These games always end on a fun little notice. So let's hop on over to the extras menu and see what we got. We got the all-cast review session. Yeah, it's a lot in a way. Well, I think that's kind of how you sum up all of the arcs so far. They're all a lot in very different ways. Alright, let's get some Angel Mort funsies. Maybe we can have some fun here.
この度も日暮らしの夏
She's
頃の
back!
たたり殺しを最後までお楽しみいただき誠にありがとうございました。これまでのシナリオとは 少し違う雰囲気でお送りしましたが、
It's a
いかがだった
different
でしょう
sort of
か。
atmosphere.
お楽しみいただけたなら幸いです。
今回も胸のすくようなバッドエンドだったわね。私個人としては大災害が実際に起こった時の惨劇の描写も欲しかったところだけど、
Takano, stop being
同
weird.
じかしら。
そんなわけありませんでしたよ。またしても
Okay, can we cut Takano from the next game?
大バッドエンド。
Mia doesn't give a fuck anymore. She's done.
あれれバッドエンドって割にはみーちゃんは楽しそうだね。っていうか、もう笑うしかないってのが本音でしょうね。
なっはっはっは。毎回嫌な割り方がエスカレートすると思ったら、とうとうここまで行き着いちゃったわけですからね。
みんな仲良しで死んじゃったのですよ。
That's one way to look at it, Rika. That's one
仲良
way.
しなのです。ニパー。
There you go. One way to look at it.
そういう見方もあるのかな。毎回死んでる僕はもうごめんだな。たまには死なずにエンドを迎えたいね。
Poor Tomitake.
富武さんって時報みたいな役割なんですよね。富武さんが死んだら、あ、後半戦突入だみたいな。さて、ではここで今回の会合に改めてご参加いただく皆さんです。拍手でお迎えください。まずは監督こと入江京介さん。
ご紹介に預かりまして光栄です。どうもどうも。脇役だったわけですが、トータルで見てみるとかなり美味しい役だったなぁなんて思ってます。
本当ですわね。
I don't want any more idiot comedy.
脇役にしては出番もセリフも多すぎで、しかもキャラが強すぎましたよ。
今後どれだけ出番があるかは分かりませんが、その説は応援よろしくお願いしますね。
ありがとうございました。では次に我らが担任、知恵ルミ子先生。皆さんどうもこんにちは。いろいろと登場シーンもあったのですが、
I could probably be
カレー
arranged.
勝負で目立つシーンをいただきまして、カレーをバカにする人は許せません。
誰もバカになんて
Yes, I
していませんよ。
wonder.
あ、知恵先生に席を開けてあげてください。さて、これでとりあえずレナ、また乾杯をよろしくね。では皆さん、
Yeah, you are way late for the party.
各卓のコップをお持ち
Somebody
になってください。
farted and Hinamizawa died.
お飲み物はいろいろありますよ。
本当にお疲れ様会も賑やかになりましたね。今何人ぐらいいるんです？
私たちを加えて多分10人くらいはいると思います。
未成年人と成年人の人数比がこれでやっと互角かな。これで胸を張ってアルコールが飲めるね。
ビールってなんで冷えてるとあんなに美味しいのに、ぬるくなるとあんなにまずくなるのかしら。七不思議の一つよね。なんででしょうね。
さあビールを継ぎますよ。12345あれ、大人は6人でしたっけ。
Rika, you can. Okay, you can have a beer. It's okay to let Rika have a beer.
僕も泡麦茶がいいのです。リカちゃんもお酒はダメ。ではレナさん、そろそろお願いします。
Yeah, like Rika deserves a beer. Given what she just had happen to her, I would let her have one.
皆さん、ご清聴ですわよ。では皆さん、日暮らしの泣く頃に水、たたり殺し、乾杯。せーの、乾杯。
さて、では毎回恒例の今回のシナリオ議論でもやってみますかね。
とは言ったものの、今回のシナリオもケムに巻かれっぱ
What's
な
to be
し。
confused about, Rena? What's to be confused about?
意見のある方は挙手をお願いしますね。
That would be pretty good.
お、みんな慎重。挙手ないね。
じゃあ私が先陣を切ろうかしら。申し訳ないんだけど、音楽を変えてもらってもいいかしら。もう少しミステリアスな感じの。
You're fucking Dalton? Are you Dalton?
これがいいわね。
Jesus Christ.
ムードが出まくりなのです。では高野さん、お願いします。
多分ね、たたり殺しのシナリオだけを吟味しても謎は解けないんじゃないかと思うの。
そりゃ同感だね。ここまで物語が重なればそういう仕掛けがあることは明白だしね。
そんな仕掛けありましたかしら。
これが正しい例かはわからないけど、鬼隠しで前原くんが大石さんとレストランで食事をして、それが園崎さんに知られていて不思議だったってくだりがありますよね。
鬼隠しだけだと実に不思議な出来事ですけど、綿流しを読めば別に不思議でも何でもないことがわかります。
劇中の私が入ったレストランは園崎系列の店だったということですね。園崎一族はこの辺りの飲食店やら何やらを経営しているわけですから。
で、ケイちゃんの顔を知る者があの店にいて、それを私に伝えたと考えれば比較的筋は通るでしょ。そういうことだね。
日暮の物語は微細に異なる場所もありますけど、大筋の設定においては多分4つのシナリオは共通していると思います。例えばキャラクター設定。
鬼隠しのレナは怖い人だけど、それは鬼隠しだけの設定ということじゃなくて、レナはレナで4つのシナリオに全く変わらない設定で出演しているということですね。
全く変わらない設定というのはどうか。僕がどのシナリオでも常に同じ場所で同じ死に方をするのはその最たるものだね。
どんな物語になっても必ず同じ日に死にますでしょ。
Tomitake has got a shtick.
綿流し編でお祭りの最中に高野さんと富武さんが西宮殿に忍び込むというシーンがありますけど、あのシーンも他のシナリオでは描かれなかっただけで起こったことになっているのかもしれませんね。
なっているそうです。綿流し当日のお天気や部活の内容、聡子のおじさんの帰宅など、いくつかのイベントを除けばほとんどが共通するそうです。
だとすると新しい疑問がいくつか湧きますね。全く同じ環境で語られる物語なのに、なぜああも違う物語に派生するのか。
一般的なサスペンスアドベンチャーの視点で考えると、物語が派生する分岐点が存在したってことになりますね。
綿流しで言うと、お姉に人形を渡した、あるいは渡さなかったというあたり。
あんな序盤の選択肢1個でバッド確定とは恐ろしい選択肢だね。
ではたたり殺しに話を戻しますと、この場合ですとおじを殺そうと決意するあたりですかしら。
私はずっとそれ以前、同居人の女性がトラブルで失踪しておじがひなみ沢に帰ってくることになったあたりからもう分岐しちゃってると思うわね。
では一番最初の鬼隠しの分岐はどこなのですか？
やはり劇中の私が登場してお社様のたたりに関する連続開始事件のことを話すあたりからだと思いますね。
Oishi's bad luck, everybody.
今思ったんですけれど、ちゃんと圭一さんがミオンさんの気持ちを理解して、それで大石さんも私のおじさんも現れなかったら何も起こらずに平和に過ごせるってことなんじゃありませんの？
へえ、さとこにしちゃ本質ズバリじゃないのよ。確かに言えてる。
Mitsutoko's got it all figured out. Higurashi has been solved.
じゃあこの暗い物語は大石さんとおじさんが現れないことを祈る。
Don't even need to bother with the
園
rest
崎
of
さん
them.
のご機嫌を
Like,
損ね
Sotoko's
な
got
い
this
ように
figured
すれ
out.
ばみんな幸せになれるということなのかしら。
やーい、おねえバッドエンド要員。みんな気をつけてね。おねえの機嫌を損ねるとバッドエンド確定ですよ。
何よそれ。シオン、あんたには次は容赦なく痛い目見させてやるからね。泣いた謝ったって許してやるもんか。待てこらー。
She's serious.
これまでの物語の謎は全然解けないけど、どうやったらこの物語が大団円で終わるかのグッドエンドの推理はできちゃいましたね。
本当にそれで幸せになれるんでしょうか。大石さんと北条哲平さんの不登場、ミヨンさんのお人形の件、本当にそれさえ気をつければいいんですかね。
そうそう、みんなは一つ大きな最後を忘れてるよ。ひなみ沢大災害という天災を忘れたかい？
Yeah, like where did that come from out of
天災
nowhere?
は防ぎようがないですわよ。村のみんなにガスマスクを配って引っ越しでもしますの？あれはきっとお社様のたたりなのです。だからお社様を怒らせないようにしなければならないのですよ。
なははは、ややこしい話になってきましたね。つまりお社様も怒らせてはダメと。お社様を怒らせないためにはどうすればいいのでしたっけ？
ダムの計画そのものがきっとダメなんでしょうね。ダム計画がそもそもなければよかったんじゃないでしょうか。
それは難しいわよね。だとしたらお怒りになったお社様を鎮める儀式が必要ね。
鬼ヶ淵の沼に捧げ物を沈めるあの儀式ですね。
There you go. Give Oishi the doll.
何をお社様に捧げるって言うんですか？
そりゃあ決まってるでしょう。
どんな分岐にも関係なく話の流れから脱落が確定している人だよ。どうせ死ぬならひなみ沢のための人柱になってもらわなくちゃね。
その脱落が確定している人ってやっぱり僕のことかな。
That's how it happens, dude.
やっぱり二郎さんはこの物語に欠かせない重
Hero is
要
a
な
very
役割の人
important
だと
role.
信じてたわ。お役目を立派に果たしてちょうだいね。
これで今度こそグッドエンドの大団円シナリオの青写真ができましたね。せっかくだからちょっとやってみましょうか。役者は全員揃ってることですしね。いやー、私が北条おじですよ。
Oh my god.
はい。行き場をなくしてロンリーブルー。早くひなみ沢に帰ってさとこちゃんをお持ち帰りしてじっくり教育。未来はご奉仕メイドですよ。では。 ひなみ沢にバイクで帰りますか。キーを入れてカチッとカチッ。
カボーン。
成敗。怪人に着せでございますわよ。さとこちゃん、火薬の量多すぎじゃないかな。
Next we stop Oishi from showing up.
今度は私ですか。私の名前はクラウド大石。ジャジーでブルースな感じがだいぶ受けてるナイスミドルですよ。
Yep, that's very weird. Yep.
成敗なのです。
そして忘れちゃいけないのがお姉へのアフターフォロー。ささお姉、可愛らしいお人形さんですよ。よかったでちゅね。なんだか納得いかない。
で最後にお社様の怒りを鎮めなくちゃならないと。
では最後のお役目よろしくね。
踏んじばってすまきにして吊るして3日かけて沈めるんでしたっけ。
面倒くさいですからここは一気にいっちゃいましょう。
ガボガボガボガボガボ。これにて一件落着。
We did it! We did it! The end! Okay, that was really good.
獅子類類で大変なことになってますのです。あれ、電話だ。もしもし。あ、ケイチくん、お疲れ様です。
おうおう、相変わらず大盛り上がりみたいじゃねえか。こっちは次回の台本読みで相変わらず忙しいってのに。まあいいや。今日の俺は機嫌がいいから嫌味はなしにしてやるぜ。シオンはいるか。もう行っちまってもいいんじゃないか。あれ
今ここで発表しちゃうんですか。とはいえもうすでに分かってる人たちもいるでしょうけど、まあいいか。
シオンさんとケイイチさんの二人っきりの秘密ですって。何よそれ。聞いてない。
Oh no! Okay, John, let's say it at the same time. 1, 2, 3. The main character of the next story will be Shion Sonozaki!
まあつまりはそういうことです。初登場以来ダントツの人気ナンバーワン。姉妹キャラでも遅れ登場した片割れの方が絶対に人気が出るってのはギャルゲー全盛時代から決められたお約束ですし。
わけわかんねえことはどうでもいいよ。とにかく俺はそのシナリオでは
He's been fired from the main character role!
俺のボイス数を超えてるとかてっへん。俺の苦労を少しは思い知れ。
まあケイちゃんのボイス数は異常ですから、他のシナリオに入れるようになればすぐに逆転されるでしょうけど、まあ園崎姉妹の実力ってやつをとくと皆さんにお見せして差し上げますよ。
でもいいんですの、シオンさん。主人公は毎回ろくでもない最後を迎えると決まってましたよ。
まあこれまではね。でもね、次回からは必ずしもそうはならないんですよね。
日暮の泣く頃に睡も今回のたたり殺しと外伝の染め写しで一区切り。ミステリアスな謎を次々と提示してきた出題編はここで折り返しになり、次の章からはこれまでの謎に挑み、そしてさらなるドラマの幕開けとなります。
つまり私が名探偵になって 理不尽な謎をバスバス解決していく痛快ストーリーなわけです。今のうちから決め台詞を考えておかないとね。あなたを犯人ですみたいな。
You're a dork.
納得いかない納得いかない。御三家の秘密に近づきすぎて閉じ込められていたぶられて悲惨な最後を遂げる役に決まってる。お姉こそ私に全ての謎と秘密をカンパされて謝罪の言葉を口にしながら自害なされる心の準備は OK です。
Damn.
お社様のたたりの可能性はなしなのですか？さて、そのしーちゃんが主役の目明かしに進むためには新しい警察資料が必要です。はじめからを選んでゲームを開始すると主人公にシオンが追加されているので、それを選んで進めてください。鬼隠し、綿流し、そしてたたり殺し、この3つのシナリオを重ね透かして皆さんにはどんな真実が見えてくるでしょうか。推理はまとまるどころかますます煙に巻かれていくだけ。レナも全然わからないです。
We present to you a final scenario. Thanks for your enthusiasm. Which was never really planned on giving you. Please enjoy it. That is right. The next arc is in fact not Mayakashi. The next arc that we will be doing is Himatsubushi. But we're not going to be touching on that until probably next week. We're probably going to take the rest of the week off. Recharge the old batteries. We might be doing Game of the Decade this weekend. Depending on how John is feeling. We'll probably have an official announcement about that in the next day or two. But yeah, the next time we will come back, there's something else we got to get to before we get to the answer arcs. And it's a unique and interesting little entry. If you don't know what it is, don't look it up. It'll be interesting. It's definitely an interesting new perspective on things. So with that, we'll catch you next time when we start the next arc.